Okay, so I'm Jose Rodriguez. Today I am going to present to you a little bit about statistics and about self-esteem and social media. I'm Jose Antonio Rodriguez. I'm from English level 5.
Pepe, pero gacha, o sea, el profesor lo que debe hacer es pedirte 10 minutos para poner.
Okay, so I'm Jose Rodriguez. Today I am going to present to you a little bit about statistics and about self-esteem and social media. I'm Jose Antonio Rodriguez. I'm from English level 5. Today I'm going to present to you this little theme. It won't be too long and a lot of stats, a lot of presenting to you all of these data and some of my reflections about it. So let's start by the first. Okay, so I'm Jose Rodriguez. Today I am going to present to you a little bit about statistics and about self-esteem and social media. I'm Jose Antonio Rodriguez. I'm from English level 5. Today I'm going to present to you this little theme. It won't be too long and a lot of stats, a lot of presenting to you all of these data and some of my reflections about it. So let's start by the first chart, and I'm going to show you this graphic. I believe it's quite important to understand the demographics first of this little survey that I did, and also get a little bit about the understanding of which kind of questions did I ask. So I actually did 100% those questions, just questions about how often, about numbers, or about like a little bit about how do people feel about certain aspects, if they're like agreeing or not agreeing, and those kind of stuff. So let's start a little bit about the age of the participants. So this little chart will show us which of these participants, the following graph will show us which of these participants, what age were they in. So first of all, we got 19 to 20, which is most of the participants. There might be as well a little bit of a bias here, and let's face it, I couldn't get so many people to get into the survey that were outside of the university. So yes, we will have a lot of people that are young people that will eventually lead us to a little bit of different conclusions about these people. For example, let's start presenting this pretty well, and after we can go and develop these ideas better. So here we can see on the first little graph that also of all of the 13 participants, 5 were from 19 to 20 years, 2 were for more than 40 years. Also, I have 1 in the range from 17 to 18 and 1 from the range of 15 to 16. Also, we have 2 of them in the age of plus 20 into 30 years, and 3 more into the more of 30 years. So that is very interesting. I have to have in account that all of these graphs are like independent of each other, so I will see like all the tendencies within the group, but individual responses I have done the analysis by myself. I will not present to you any of those tables because I believe there is quite enough of information now with what I have here. So yes, a little bit of the statistics. The most presentable one would be like 19 to 20 years. It will be like 45%. A lot of people are there. It's substantial because most of them are university students. And let's get into the next one, which I'm kind of starting by the ending because these ones are kind of important to understand the later topics of this presentation. So turning our attention into the next subdivision of the survey, we have the most frequently used social media applications. So mostly of them were Instagram. 5 responses. That might as well be the responses from 19 to 20. Instagram is a really common applications within this group, especially within the participants from 19 to 20 years, because that is the most used app for really young people. As we go into older generations, we will see another kind of apps like WhatsApp or like Facebook kicking in, and other, I don't know what that other was, but yes, people have a little bit of a broad spectrum of these social media apps that they use regularly, but Instagram is by far one of the most used ones. So again, it's like 45% of the people use Instagram. WhatsApp is pretty used, but in this question I asked what is the most used. If I said what is the used, possibly a lot of more people would have used WhatsApp because all of people kind of use that as a principal medium of communication. So let's get then into another statistic, another of these charts that will graphic a little bit of this tendency to the people into believing or not promoting more realistic body images on social media platforms. For this example, we have a little bit of a pretty close distribution between strongly agree and agree. Most of people think Instagram and these social media apps should start to change because they do not promote these realistic body images, and this will be seen in their examples. And the key highlights are yes, like all these percentages that are just for strongly agree 30% and agree 36%. There are in total like 60-70% of the people think it should change, definitely. So that is very interesting, seeing that the majority of these people believe there might be a way to mitigate and to make a change and make negative body image perceptions like fade away into our culture and kind of get a new understanding of this phenomenon. So let's get into another one of these graphs. This one we might get into it a little bit closer just to see a little bit of the distribution. This one is kind of well distributed, kind of, but still we have 2 predominant like responses that are the most commonly found, which is that people either say they never edit their photos or they sometimes. This is also a possibly biased question because most of people do not want to admit that, oh yes, I alter my photos in social media to look like more attractive or whatever. So that is very interesting. Although this survey was anonymous, we can have that in account that people may have a little bit of a restriction, a little bit of friction when it comes to talk about this topic. So yeah, photo editing is prevalent, but this has like varied practice between participants. Also within SRE groups, I didn't see much of a difference actually. And understanding the behaviors is kind of important for later too, because sometimes we gotta be really precise with our knowledge of the people about their behavior into having a little bit more conclusive results of these statistics. Let's go into the next one, which would be frequently promoting personal pictures on social media. So the question was how often do you post pictures of yourself? So very often it's a little bit of little percentages, like 7%. Rarely also. Most of people sometimes get into it. It's kind of normal, it's very respectable between these college students to just doing follow-ups or uploading videos as they go in their careers and they think they have to go. So sometimes it's one of the most predominant answers with 5 responses, 45%, and other also has like about 30%. It's kind of a big percentage also and can be taken into account. So people do have interactions, but they also have a lot of consumption. That is very important. Key highlights. So let's get into the I will present to you, and we can turn our attention into the confidence levels after using social media. This stat will indicate us a little bit about how those people feel after the social media interaction. If they see some photos about other people, they feel more confident or not. And also having an account that maybe you might have a little bit of a bias also, because people are kind of resistant and not so happy sometimes to saying, oh yes, I am very like, I can be easily hurt by people doing better than me, or I am envious, or I have any negative quality when I see other people. So agree would be 30%, it's a high up percentages, but also neutral would be like a little bit more, about 38%, which is a higher percentage. So let's have in account that most of these may have or not influence with the coping mechanism of the people, which may have many other sources of like feeling confidence that not only social media, but it is kind of an important response. I don't see much of a difference between different ranges of ages, but we cannot see a little bit of a connection between high use of social media and high anxiety about these kind of topics, and low confidence, and a little bit of more negative things. So that is very important. I feel pretty bad about this, and getting a little bit more profound, getting into the details, into the more complex about of it is very, very concerning. We have to be alert. This situation might be getting out of hand, because this social media interaction is slowly getting too much toxic for most of people, and the more they use these like most modern social media technologies, the more they get these kind of real bad interactions, and they feel more lonely, and all of these things that we have seen in the statistics. So that is some interesting conclusions. Let's get into the next one. The next one would be the frequency of encountering body positive content. So this also kind of is a little bit of a broad question, can have a little bit of interaction, can be complex to understand. Why? Because most of the people say like often they have body positive content, but maybe we should have discussed what is body positive content, and that might be a discussion for later. So yes, most of people say often, so most people say like few, some people say sometimes. It's kind of inconclusive. So yes, most of participants have really relatively high among of relatively high body positive content, which is kind of important. And yes, this prevalence may induce a little bit of a better life in social media. I would say that is a really good statistic. I really make me optimistic about the future. I hope these stats keep going. Next one would be frequency of income and next one would be perception of social media impacts of self-esteem. So this is one of the most crucial statistics of all of these ones, because all of this context has brought us here. So having in account that these are university students, maybe some of them have a little bit of more coping mechanism, have more time. Some others, like me, for example, have not much time to do extra activities, so we cannot be a little bit less centered in those kind of things and can be more vulnerable. So that is very interesting. And talking about this, we can see that one of the most important things is that most of people feel neutral. This again biased, possibly because having in account all of the usages of people of Instagram and these kind of social networks, and all of these inconsistencies between, oh yes I care, or yes I feel like less confident, and all of those sort of stuff, but also seeing like, oh no, but it doesn't affect my self-esteem, can be like a little bit of a deviation maybe, because it's kind of hard to admit that maybe you are going through something, and those things are kind of important to take in apart, because many people say they disagree. So that is interesting. I cannot debate it instead. So later studies may have a little bit more of a power in statistical power, and can get a little bit more conclusive about this one, which is the main finding actually. So yes, a significant number of people remain neutral. Only like 7.7% strongly agree or strongly disagree. So this is kind of a bad ending or a little sorry, but still we can get important information. So the next one would be feeling pressure to change appearance due to social media. So I believe this has been pretty clear by other investigations, and mostly because of real life encounters and real life events that happen. Because, for example, you can see the phenomenon of the influencers are rising, and yes, most people say, oh no, I'm neutral, but that can be a bias, because how do you know that things are not influencing? It may be a little bit more of a less conscious process than you think, because if you were conscious of all the content you are scrolling through, maybe you should be using your time for other kinds of stuff. I believe maybe I am getting a little bit too profound on this, and let's get a little bit more into the statistics. So statistics says agree has another high level of percentages on this pie chart. Actually, it's kind of interesting that 4 responses says they agree that they have feel a little bit pressure to change appearance. So it's kind of interesting how people have these frictions into saying these kind of stuff, even though they know that it's anonymous. It's kind of hard to know these things for sure. Let's get a little bit more of this information and get into, for example, the frequency of comparing appearance of social media. This one maybe does not have so much friction. Actually, it's one of the most interesting results, because in this one we have an almost symmetrical distribution of the data. Let's get into our attention into this. Let's get a little bit of a close eye into this one, because we see like never and the other one, which we sometimes and very often are kind of in the same level, and rarely and often are kind of like on a tie too. So it's very interesting that most people says a little bit of a frequency, use frequency average for all of these ones, but like most of them says yes, they have been feeling compared. Some says more than others, and yes, it's very important that this survey group regularly engages into social media and constantly has these kind of comparisons, and may lead to negative self-perception. And it's kind of interesting that if we took this chart and extrapolate it into also the group pages and also the social networks we will use, we can find a little bit more of a difference in how young people with possibly less developed character and other aspects of their lives may have like this more heightened sense of what social media or like social interactions meaning have in their lives, and it's pretty okay because it's part of the normal development of the brain. Let's get into perception of social media influence on body image. This is kind of crucial one, because self-esteem can be really derived by many things, but body image, as you seen, I have made surveys all around it, because it's one of the most easy to see in surveys, they're one of the most easy to like measure to say, because some other things may come from intelligence or from active, or may have connections with others, or may have to do with many other factors. Self-esteem is a very interesting interaction of complex little variants that may have an impact into it. So yes, most of people agree that, well, some disagree, some agree. It's kind of most of them said it's neutral too. So yes, maybe nice, maybe not. This may be better seen if we get people into like being the most sincere as possible. We can't know for sure if they're being completely honest with the survey. So I hope they are, and they are not so affected. And after all, social media is not as bad. I believe it is, but let's see. It's kind of hard to know, and many people will just be kind of taking all back, holding back all of the feelings what they think they are feeling, because simply they do not feel like it. And it's okay for those people to live their processes. There will be people that literally do not care, just living their lives, and that is also a respectable opinion. So let's get into the number one, which is kind of our last one to discuss on this like profound analysis of the charts and of the statistics. So let's get into details of this one. So yes, it is kind of asymmetrical distribution. Also, almost never been answered actually. Like in very few statistics we have found it. Maybe people do have a little bit of well, how to say it, people mostly are not like so much of on the opposite sides of whatever thing we're saying politically or statistically. Most of people are just average and will mostly say like sometimes, often, rarely, and very often. So that is exactly what we see here, like a typical statistical distribution where people say they often see social media, they rarely sometimes see, yeah, maybe these kind of usages can get a little bit more or less disturbing because some people use it for educative purposes, or maybe for really having time with their friends. Some other people may have an addiction to it. So it's kind of hard to derive who of these people that says yes sometimes or never or very often actually believe it, or are just like coping mechanisms, or maybe we are getting a little bit too deep down into it. And let's conclude. Let's get into a conclusion about this whole group, because there is a long list of things that we could mention here, but most of them are kind of going into the same way, are kind of leading us to a path, which is that younger individuals are usually more visually attractive, are visually guided into what is attractive or not. So that is pretty important because of the context of social media. There's so much content that can be uploaded simply by tapping 3 buttons, and people can see it and get a lot of content into their devices, and algorithms sort of it in the way that keeps the people the most time into the platform. So enterprises can get a little bit of money out of getting ads of these people. So basically, these are rigged into getting you addicted and to getting you more time in the platform. It literally gives you money the more time you spend on it. So another interesting example would be to make a little bit of a survey about social media addiction, not only by age, not only by group, not only taking account that, oh yes, Instagram and like younger kids tend to have a little bit more of a social media addiction, which has been seen in this study, but also like taking into account different career paths and levels of stress and other kind of factors that may have a little bit of a crucial outflow into these final results. Also, yes, also other participants use mostly WhatsApp as their main social media app, which would be kind of a messaging app. That is kind of something we can discuss and consider this university-based sample, because that is what I can get. I am very sorry, I did my best, and I hope maybe in the future I can get a little bit of best results by having a little bit of a bigger pool of participants and get bigger amounts of data to contrast and to get more precise conclusions of what is happening there. So also addressing biases, as we have done throughout all this analysis, can be really important to have this understanding first, and then into designing some strategies by institutional or public or whatever means we have to get these people to, most people, to get a better life, to get a better experience, like navigating social media and loving themselves, because self-esteem is something that we shouldn't at all be laughing about. It's certainly very important topic about mental health, and I hope you have enjoyed this analysis, these stats. I have taken a lot of time doing it, and I hope it may have invited you to think, invited you to want to investigate more. It has like make your earbuds tasting